Wow, this was a pretty crazy anime watching week. I don't know how long it's been since I've done anything that intense. So, I'm not even going to try and count titles. It doesn't help that there was a bunch of movies in there, so it means the number of titles worth mentioning are up there. But let's begin with the very first thing, Spice and Wolf 2. And I'm going to mention, so it seemed like it took a while for Funimation to announce the license for Spice and Wolf 2. It's my understanding that Funimation was holding off on acquiring licenses to a couple of other things, maybe the OVA and the specials that were on the DVD, before officially releasing all of Spice and Wolf 2. And if that's the case, that's actually really appreciated. The specials aren't too spectacular, but are nice to have finish the checklist. So it means that with Spice and Wolf 1 and the Spice and Wolf 2 releases, you actually get all of you can check off all the Spice and Wolf entries off of Anime Planet or My Anime List. Probably other anime sites, but those are the main two I use pretty much. So, to begin with, the Spice and Wolf OVA is actually an episode in between seasons 1 and 2, and it's episode 0 on the DVD/Blu-ray. So, that was it's really nice that was there, put in the right place. It's a good, well, I'm trying to think if it is a good transition or not. It's a good transition, just like any one episode of Spice and Wolf, I suppose. But then after that comes season 2, and it's really interesting how different season 1 and 2 are, because season 1 is exploring a lot of the concept of the two characters as individuals beginning to meet. So there's a whole lot more information on, or there's more exploration on what they are, what they do, and them getting used to each other as the series kind of went. Season 2, I don't remember season 1 being this intense with the basic ideas. Season 2 is more of a romance than the first season was, where the basic idea is, now that we have a good idea of where they are, and season 1 I think ended on a note of, I don't know how to describe it, but season 2, it's basically, I described season 1 as it being about each of the characters as individuals beginning to travel with each other, getting used to each other. Season 2 is about the two of them as a pair, so to speak, and I thought that actually made it a lot more, it was kind of intense to watch, kind of a really nerve-wracking. And where it ended, I think there's actually good room for Spice and Wolf Season 3. I think I've heard people mention wanting to see that. It's also possible that the material that Spice and Wolf is based on had more than one. This one might have come from novels if I think about it, but I think there's still value in a third season, so it's unfortunate I haven't heard of any yet, or maybe it's been announced and I just haven't heard of it. I don't know, but overall it was a good watch. It was good to see more Spice and Wolf. After that, I decided I needed to watch the finished Eden of the East, and I watched that with my friend. But you know, the second Eden of the East movie is really a lot more of the same. Surprisingly enough, it kind of ends the same way the series did, where it kind of ended, but didn't really try and resolve anything other than through some. Well, it was kind of interesting that the topic came up because my friend was talking about why John Lennon is his least favorite Beatle, and it has to do with his ideas being kind of unrealistic from my friend's point of view, whereas a lot of people would normally say, I guess, Ringo, because he came in later and replaced a previous drummer. Don't quote me on that. I only know the names, and basically that I guess Ringo was a drummer. But the basic idea is, I thought we saw a lot of that in what I thought was supposed to be the conclusion of the Eden of the East stuff. I say I thought it would because I'm still under the impression that it ended, but that doesn't mean that there can't be ways for these people to find more wiggle room to do more stuff. But the basic idea is it does end the entire game that's been going on, in a way, I guess. And it kind of felt a bit contrived, which normally wouldn't have been a problem since the entire situation was kind of contrived to begin with. But I guess the real problem is that it kind of didn't resolve a whole lot of other aspects to the series. I guess I don't want to go in too much detail there, but to be honest, it felt a bit incomplete. Not as badly after the credits as before, since it felt like it kind of resolved some issues with the way it looked like it was ending, but yeah. Now, the only trick is, I'm not actually done with Eden of the East stuff, because I realized, so I already knew there was an Eden of the East, a summary of the series in movie form called Air Communication, I think. And it only just now, I only just recently realized, poking around on the DVDs, that that's actually on the bonus disc for the first movie. It's a complete separate movie. This one's not dubbed, I think. It might be subtitled only. But now that I know that, I guess I've got to find time to go and rewatch that just to, finish off the checklist. Because I'm actually doing a whole lot of that right now. I guess this is a very obsessive-compulsive week. But before we get to the other obsessive-compulsive stuff, I also rewatched Slayer Season 2. Slayer's Next, I believe. And that actually contained a lot more of the stuff that I remember really fascinating about the Slayer's universe. Specifically the Claire Bible stuff, which was kind of really hard to describe without going into too much detail about what was really neat about it. But I enjoyed rewatching Season 2. I was mostly surprised, though, that something I remembered the Season 2 incidents setting up for Season 3 wasn't actually stated until the very first episode of Season 3. I threw that up just to take a peek at the very first episode to see if they would talk about that, and, it's the first thing they talk about, so it's very interesting. So basically, I guess this gets kind of closer to what makes Slayers neat. It isn't like genre changing or anything like that. I think the personalities are kind of normal, but not in situations we come to expect. Basically, what I'm trying to say is my friend was talking about how when you have a series that's about a ragtag group of heroes that are maybe not completely heroes, maybe kind of semi-quasi-heroes, as some people like to call the anti-hero, but there's kind of a fine line there. Something sort of like Cowboy Bebop or Outlaw Star. I'm thinking he was probably mostly on his mind. A normal staple of those kind of series is they also have to be poor for some reason. And Slayers is one of those where that doesn't really seem to be the problem. So the appeal for Slayers has to come from somewhere else, not these awesome people who are always struggling to get by, but rather what makes Slayers fascinating is just its universe and setup, and it's kind of more slow and harder to pick up until you're like watching the fourth season and you realize, wait, that stuff all happened in the first season, didn't it? That stuff's actually pretty cool. It feels like an interesting universe to explore, and the main character, Lena Inverse, is just quite an awesome personality. I probably mentioned this with Gokudo, but you have the Gokudo series, which is kind of like it kind of has some similar feel to Slayers, probably being from the 90s, similar kinds of humor, drawing style, or whatever. But I said that I like the Lena Inverse character a lot more than Gokudo. That's still the case. Lena Inverse is always quite fascinating. Oh well, I guess this means I should rewatch Season 3 at some point, but I don't know when that'll be. At this point, I'm going forward because I have a plan, and that plan's about to end soon, so I don't know what's going to happen after that. Because when I mentioned about compulsively finishing up stuff, well, obviously I bought the Dragon Ball Z movies on Blu-ray, and I decided I didn't know what I wanted to watch next. What I should really do is finally catch up on all that Dragon Ball related stuff that I hadn't. I already watched all of the first Dragon Ball, and I've seen all of the original Dragon Ball Z series and about half of the movies. So, oh, and all the Dragon Ball movies. So that meant that I'm playing a catch up with Dragon Ball right now. I'm trying to get the rest of it on Blu-ray that's been released on Blu-ray, so I have this series under my thumb. I'm just waiting for new releases to come out in order to watch whatever I want to watch that's Dragon Ball. And having a series like Dragon Ball under your thumb like that seems like a really good thing to do, since it's kind of crazy and you end up doing what I did here. But anyways, here's what I ended up doing. I watched movies 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. That would be, okay, that would basically be not in the same order. Super Android 13, BoJack Unbound, the three Brawley movies, Fusion Reborn, and Wrath of the Dragon. And then I've been watching Dragon Ball GT. And I'm about 60 episodes into that, so I've got 4 more episodes and then the one movie to finish it up. And all that leaves is Dragon Ball Kai, and then hunting down a couple of OVAs off the internet that I don't think have been released on DVD. But that's I don't know how I almost wondered if I would be able to, but didn't think it was possible. But 60 episodes on top of 6 movies, 7 movies, a 26 episode series, a 12 episode series. That's I don't know the math. That must be that's just mind boggling for me. But let's see if I can talk about them. Super Android 13. I thought the Android characters introduced in that one were actually pretty interesting as characters' personalities. I can't remember their numbers. I guess it's that little purple one was kind of funny, intriguing, and then the titular character Android 13 is kind of funny. I'm not sure how much of that is the dub, though, because I'm not sure if the Japanese subtitled version would play similar stereotypes. Hard to say. They kind of do some interesting things with the dubs for Dragon Ball sometimes. But, watching that movie, I watched the Blu-ray version. The first thing that actually came to mind is nothing about the story really gripped me, made me feel this is awesome. It's something I'll probably want to rewatch again. But it was interesting comparing the quality of the video to Yu Yu Hakusho. It almost felt like a lot of the stuff they did that I commented about how good the video processing was in the Yu Yu Hakusho Blu-ray releases. I don't know if it was the same in the previous season releases on DVD, but it looked like some of that same stuff was there in the Dragon Ball Z movies, just maybe not quite as well defined and exercised as Yu Yu Hakusho, but that makes sense. These are actually pretty old Blu-ray releases, I don't remember the dates, but I think they're surprisingly old releases, so I kind of expect that. I think Funimation is understanding better what they're doing, so I guess I'd watch out for any future DBZ movie re-releases. In fact, I wonder if checking out the movie releases coming out later this year in a collection pack would be worthwhile. But I probably have better things I could spend my money on. I'd rather spend it on a Spice and Wolf Season 1 Viridian collection, which should match the Season 2 release perfectly. Oh well, so Super Android 13, nothing about it other than the interesting characters stood out to me, other than this interesting exploration into Funimation's video processing release stuff. BoJack Unbound, that one actually began amusing enough. I just kind of thought that I couldn't really care about the villains because they just suddenly came out of nowhere. But the funniest thing was when it's like, oh, what is it, King Kai? Did you just say that BoJack was unbound? Yes, he just said the words that are the title of the movie. I don't know. It reminds me of that Family Guy clip thing, fade thing. Now, the Brawley movies. This is my second time watching the first Brawley movie, but I figured it was important if I was going to watch the other two. And my overall opinion of them is one of disappointment, and I think a lot of that is that I expected more Brawley. It's possible it's because various clips of these specific movies and Dragon Ball GT, you know, I've seen those in music video stuff, and people would choose the best scenes from a lot of this stuff, and naturally that would mean that the best scenes of Brawley would be there, and everything else about it just kind of feels. I thought the setup for Brawley the Legendary Super Saiyan, both the setup of the characters, how they're introducing and meeting each other, and their histories, I thought all of that was really neat and fascinating, but Brawley himself wasn't as indestructible a character as I would have preferred, I think. Or perhaps it's because he was just seemingly indestructible. I would have expected something with power levels at this level to be planet destroying. And I think the comet had more to do with the destruction of the planet than Brawley. Brawley's Second Coming was kind of worse because it's here on Earth, so naturally any battle has to not be that spectacular. Compare and contrast to the Boo battle where oh well. So, movie 2 takes place on the second Brawley movie takes place on Earth, and there's just some fighting stuff that goes on. Yeah. Again, just a couple of neat scenes of it, Brawley indestructible, and memories of mining obsidian and slime infest hallways in Minecraft. By the way, I was doing Minecraft all weekend. And then the final Brawley movie, Bio Brawley, was just strange. Not necessarily bad, but strange. I can't think of any other way to describe that one. Movies 12 and 13, on the other hand, those ones were actually pretty neat. You know, I mean, part of this may just be the bias of watching anime back in the Cartoon Network days, but the first three movies are some of the neater ones in my opinion. Movie 4 started to get weak, and I think a lot of people really like Tree of Might, but actually, of the first three, Tree of Might was my least favorite, with Dead Zone being next, and World's Strongest being my favorite. And World's Strongest is still my favorite. So I'm going to have to figure out where in there 12 and 13 are going to go. I might have to rewatch the first movie to figure that out. But the basic idea is that, well, let's see. Movie 12 deals... The thing I really liked about movie 12 is that normally a problem with Dragon Ball Z is the power levels are going so crazy that you're like, these people, they should be warping reality and destroying entire worlds at a whim and just being inexplicable. You just wouldn't be able to explain what they do, how it happens, anything. And I thought movie 12 captured that a bit better than anything else I've seen in Dragon Ball Z since maybe some of the Boo stuff. I'd have to think about Cell. But the thing, if you talk about the villains in Dragon Ball Z, I think the thing about the androids that was neat is that their power levels seem to be subtly different. Sort of like a really well-defined tool, I guess. You hear about, like, surgical instruments that can maybe cut atoms or something like that, and the androids kind of gave that sort of impression. Like, they were just really ridiculously precise, as well as having power in a condensed form, whereas everything else is just explosions, but with so many rogue explosions, at the power levels that most of these characters are fighting at, they should be destroying the entire planet every single time they sneeze. Movie 12, the entire premise of it is a character gets born. I thought it was a very plausible scenario for such a ridiculously powerful being to come into existence, and he literally warps reality. And that provides some very amusing things when um, characters from the past are able to come back to life to try and attack Earth. But of course, characters like Frieza are just completely unmatched against Saiyans in the later Booish, close to Booish area of Dragon Ball Z. That's sort of what makes it fun and entertaining. Um, I mentioned that in particular because Dragon Ball GT has some related stuff that I need to talk about later. But overall, I thought movie 12 was a very satisfying watch. Movie 13, now, I'm not quite sure what I thought about all the battles. It's possible at that time not as much of that part sunk in as much as the story, which was just. Movie 13 was just a neat little story, which the Z characters were almost. They weren't exactly central to it, they were just part of it, so to speak. I can't think of any other way to explain it. The basic idea of that one is a hero gets resurrected, but the person who made this hero resurrected had ulterior motives, and there's something bad is going to happen because the warrior has been resurrected. So, without going into more details, that was the 13 movie. And then there's finally Dragon Ball GT, which I'm like, okay, I just started all the Dragon Ball Z stuff. Let's see. I finished it Sunday evening, and then I have my Labor Day Monday. It's time to decide what to watch. Well, I'm doing more Minecraft stuff. That had a mountain that absolutely had to go away. So, let's continue Dragon Ball. It is just. There's interesting content here and there, but there's just enough not need to pay complete attention to it. If I'm going to do a bunch of Minecraft digging anyways, I can get through a lot of Dragon Ball GT, which I've been kind of dreading. I had read about it before, and the synopsis of everything. And overall, I actually have to say, it wasn't too horrible, but it wasn't great. So I would just say it's okay. Description that I might have read on it just before I started watching, which I thought very well describes it, is that it seems like a fan fiction. I think I'm trying to remember who all has told me, if it's just my brother's wife or anybody else, but basically Dragon Ball GT was not written by it didn't come from the manga or the source material that Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z came from. So that pretty much makes it something that was made up for the sake of continuing Dragon Ball stuff. And in that regard, it sort of makes sense to consider it a fan fiction, and a lot of what goes on feels like it. A lot of the problems I've complained about with power levels around the Frieza saga, or just beyond the Frieza saga, I think I've complained a lot about the idea that sometimes the people making this show forget just how powerful they've made the characters. Dragon Ball GT does that like crazy. They obviously need characters that are a challenge for the main characters, but so they'll introduce a character and say, "Be careful, this guy is stronger than Majin Buu." And then the little quarter Saiyan girl is able to land a couple hits in. She can't even go Super Saiyan. They should be fighting at power levels that can destroy entire planets. And the story is strange. I mean, I found this setup to be kind of interesting, save for the problem of Black Star Dragon Balls, which I think is honestly a really stupid concept. But the idea of Emperor Pilaf happening upon them was like, hey, somebody remembers the first Dragon Ball, and actually, GT seems to be a lot of that, with the idea of turning Goku into a little boy again, and having a lot of what he does continue to be even more boyish than he was as an adult in Dragon Ball Z. He was still very childish, but not boy Goku childish, which boy again, Goku kind of is. Which isn't too bad. Again, that's everything about it. It wasn't as horrible as I was expecting, or at least the 60 episodes of it that I've seen. There's 4 more episodes and then I'm done. But it's a bit contrived, and I thought its explanations of Super Saiyan monkey stuff, the stuff just before Super Saiyan 4, that did not really. That seemed to directly contradict what I remember the series saying. And I think that's pretty much in line with what you expect from fanfiction. The really good fanfictions, the best fanfictions. No, I'm not a fanfiction reader, but I'm guessing the best fanfictions are the kind of stuff where you're like, that's probably the way those characters would really react. That's probably the way the universe would really unfold. Things like that. Whereas with fan fictions, you would probably expect subtle things such as the new characters introduced to be um, clearly demonstrated to overpower any other previous concepts. Maybe putting them side by side by in-game stuff, or in show stuff, and then showing, oh, this new stuff is even better than that specific person. And I've got an example of that. While also things such as maybe having subtle facts wrong here and there. It'd probably also be expected for particularly bad fan fictions to have self-inserted characters that are the author inserting themselves into the universe in a way. But GT hasn't had any of that, and the production values for it are fine. So overall, it's actually not that bad, and I'd say the only real waste of time per se has been a flashback episode with Vegeta remembering stuff from Dragon Ball Z. So Dragon Ball GT had a Dragon Ball Z recap, not a recap episode, just a clip episodes of Vegeta and Goku stuff from Vegeta's perspective. Although to be fair, there's probably been a lot of Dragon Ball. There was probably a couple Dragon Ball recap episodes in Dragon Ball Z. I bet this video is going on a long time, so let's see if I can finish it up by wrapping stuff up. The examples of a couple of this stuff. Well, the example I had of the subtle facts wrong is the Super Saiyan and monkey stuff, the tail stuff, all that stuff. That seems to slightly contradict exactly what was said in Dragon Ball Z. So that's an example of the factual wrong. The idea of the new characters being introduced as super superior to old characters actually comes in the form of, or I thought it was that way in the Super Android 17 saga, which isn't much of a saga per se, with the basic idea that Dr. Gero, who created the androids in Dragon Ball Z, and Dr. Mew, this new character in Dragon Ball GT, work together to create this way to escape from hell using 2 Android 17s basically. Which is, oh well, whatever. We'll just buy it for now because hell's been picking up way too many super overpowered characters. But Mew double crosses Jiro because he's better at making robots than Jiro is. I would have preferred them to both be a villain combo through the entire saga instead of them rehashing Jiro being taken out and double crossed. Well, you can't win them all. The other interesting thing about the Super Android 17 saga that I was talking about mentioning before, is once again villains come to life from hell. And this time, since it's for like 2 or 3 episodes, it's hard to tell. Marathon mode makes them blur together. Basically, that meant Goku fighting Frieza and Cell, and it not being as one-sided as it really should have been, but I guess close enough. Kind of time-consuming and wasting, but not as much as anything in some of the more bad and some of the worst parts of Dragon Ball Z. And then the final problem, the final story arc is really the one that demonstrates this problem of their power levels are ridiculously high, but the series is not treating them. Supposedly, these shadow dragons are supposed to be so ridiculously powerful and dangerous that they're a threat to the entire planet, but they're doing some really basic, silly, stupid things that don't make you think that until, it gets closer to the end. It's like, now we have to up the ante and actually make these things look dangerous. So I haven't seen the conclusion yet. Hopefully I'll remember to actually state the conclusion next week, or my thought overall. But honestly, at this point, I'm pretty sure I know what happens. I'm not expecting too much, so it'd be more interesting to see what I have to say about the hero's legacy, and I guess picking up the couple of OVAs that have been floating around that I haven't seen. But there we go. I don't know how long this video is going to end up. Maybe I have to split it in two. I don't know how I'm going to do that since I've never done it before. But well, that's all of anime analysis. What do I try and... If you feel like it, try and calculate how many minutes of anime this means I've watched, because I just can't think about it.